treating adults like I mean, those are just terms.
Are you sure?
Okay, whatever the term is, maybe love is maybe the
eatable
better
compassion
word.
is.
I mean, I suppose I'm speaking to love. You don't think those ideas came from concern?
Love is compassion.
You don't think
love is a blend of compassion and encouragement and truth. Love's complicated, man.
Yeah,
if I love you, if I love you, is it compassion or encouragement you want from me?
Yeah, it's a dance. Love is definitely a dance of two humans. Ultimately, that leads to the growth of both.
Well, that's the thing. The growth element is crucial.
Yeah.
Because the growth element, to foster the growth element, that requires judgment. Compassion and judgment, well, even, and have been conceptualized this way forever, two hands of God, mercy and justice. They have to operate in tandem, right? And mercy is, flawed as you are, you're acceptable. It's like, well, do you want that? Do you want your flaws to be acceptable? And the answer to that is no. It's like, well, that's where the judgment comes in. It's like, but you could be better. You could be more than you are. And that's the maternal and the paternal in some fundamental sense. And there has to be a active exchange of information between those two poles. So even if Trudeau was motivated by compassion, it's like, yeah, just how loving are you, first of all? No, it was a really bad decision. And then he's expressed contempt for monetary policy. I'm not interested in monetary policy. It's like, okay, but you're prime minister. And he's expressed admiration for the Chinese Communist Party because they can be very efficient in their pursuit of environmental goals. It's like, oh yeah, efficiency, eh? The efficiency of the tyranny in the service of your terror. And I've watched him repeatedly and I've listened to him a lot, and I've tried to do that clinically and with some degree of dispassion. And that's hard too, because his father, Pierre, devastated the West in 1982 with the national energy policy. And Trudeau is doing exactly the same thing again. And so as a Westerner as well, I have an inbuilt animus, and one that's well-deserved, because Central Canada, especially the glittery, literati elite types in the Ottawa, Montreal, Toronto triangle, have exploited the West and expressed contempt for the West far too much for far too long. And that's accelerating at the moment, for example, with Trudeau's recent attack on the Canadian farmers. He's an enemy of the oil and gas industry, which is an utter and absolute bloody catastrophe. And look what's happened in Europe, at least in partial consequence. And he's no friend to the farmers. So I've tried to steel man him, I try to put myself in the position of the people that I'm criticizing. I think he's a narcissist.
Do you think there's a degree to which power changed him?
If you're not suited for the position, if you're not the man for the position, you can be absolutely 100% sure that the power will corrupt you. How could it not? I mean, at the least, if you don't have the chops for the job, you have to devalue the job to the point where you can feel comfortable inhabiting it. So, yes, I think that it's corrupted him. And I mean, look at him doubling down. We wear masks in flights into Canada. We have to fill out an ArriveCAN bureaucratic form on our phones because a passport isn't good enough. We can't get a passport. What if you're 85 and you don't know how to use a smartphone? Oh, well, too bad for you.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, it's corrupted him.
Would you talk to him? Well, if you were to sit down and talk with him and he wanted to talk, would you, and what kind of things would you talk about, perhaps on your podcast?
I don't think I've ever said no to talking to anyone. So, which is,
Would you, would that be a first, or would you make that conversation? Do you believe in the power of
I'd
conversation
ask
in
him.
those kinds of contexts?
No, if he was willing to talk to me, I'd talk, because I'd like to ask him. I have lots of things I'd like to ask him about. I mean, I've had political types in Canada on my podcast and tried to ask them questions. So I'd like to know.
Is there something?
And maybe I've got a big part of him wrong.
Yes.
And I probably do. But my observation has been that every chance he had to retreat from his pharaonic position, let's say, he doubled down. And these, our parliament is not running for the next year. It's still Zoom in. It's still COVID lockdown parliament for the next year. It's already been fatally compromised, perhaps, by the lockdowns for the last couple of years. And this is parliament we're talking about.
Yeah. There's a kind of paralysis, fear-driven paralysis that also, in part, some of the most brilliant people I know are lost in this paralysis. I don't think people assign a word to it, but it's almost like a fear of this unknown thing that lurks in the shadows. And that, unfortunately, that fear is leveraged by people that, who aren't in academic circles, who aren't faculty or students and so on, are more in administration. And they start to use that fear, which makes me quite uncomfortable. It does lend people in the positions of power who are not good at handling that power to become slowly, day by day, a little bit more corrupt.